As a marketing data analyst, I spent several years helping businesses understand how to measure their marketing effectiveness properly. As a large business, it can be especially confusing because there are so many marketing channels you're working on and so many numbers that you can choose to measure marketing by. In this video, I'm going to tell you how to cut to the chase and measure the effectiveness of your digital marketing and marketing as a whole simply and effectively so you can see that return on investment. Bold claim, but by the end of this video, you're going to be twice as effective at measuring marketing effectiveness, and you'll save yourself dozens, maybe hundreds of hours of saved time looking at confusing charts. So without further ado, let's just get started. I've broken this out into 3 major tips to make this more digestible. Starting with the first tip, this one is about starting with the qualitative goals of your business. You want to define specifically your organizational goal as well as your departmental and team goals, because without the right goal, you're not really sure where you're going to go. If there's no clear signpost on where you're trying to get to, it doesn't really matter which way you're going, right? So that's a little bit of a quote towards that Alice in Wonderland book where they mention something similar. But the point is you have to have a specific goal in mind. And no matter what numbers you measure, and me being a very numbers type of person, it doesn't really matter what you're measuring if you don't have a goal in mind and it's not clear and specific. So for example, traffic. Is traffic really an important goal? Well, it depends on what you're trying to get to. So define your goals. Usually an organization will already have an org goal, but that's very broad and overarching. So you really have to break that down into more specific qualitative team and departmental goals. And that's usually a bit more muddy. So you may have to talk and sit down with leadership and really define what are they trying to get to. So specifically, let me give you an example. So one organizational goal for, let's say, a nonprofit may be, we want to end world hunger by 2026 and reduce suffering. Just to make this a clear and simple example. And then a goal under that on your marketing team may be, we want to grow the amount of people who donate to this organization. Okay, now you have something very specific and attainable and maybe even time-bound, like a SMART goal to actually head towards. So with these qualitative goals, now you can construct quantitative goals behind them. You see how important it is to have qualitative goals? Without that first step, it doesn't really matter what you can measure. You can measure all these things, but does it really help? It really depends. So then from there, you can start to identify KPIs and then supporting metrics underneath those that are more granular to get you there. So an example, just to continue this nonprofit thing, is we need to increase traffic by 100% in the next 2 quarters to double the amount of donors who convert on our pages. That could be one thing. So now you have, the amount of traffic as a metric. And then another might be we need to increase the conversion rate by 15% on these landing pages so that we can get more donors without having to drive more traffic. So that could be another goal. And now you can measure conversion rate and the number of conversions. So you can see kind of how these all play together and work to defining the specific metrics that matter. Because I think what most people do instead, and where they make the mistake, is they see this analytics platform or interface with hundreds of metrics they choose from, and then just by gut feeling or intuition or whatever, they just randomly choose a few metrics and pull that into a dashboard or chart, not knowing or understanding that they're not really that important. And what they end up with is this report or dashboard that has hundreds of metrics stuffed together, cluttered, confusing, and then you show that to leadership and they get confused and overwhelmed. So that brings us to number 2. So the second tip I would recommend is listen, don't assume. And what I mean by this is, having worked with probably over 100 different clients, having worked agency life all these 8 years in the professional world, is that a lot of these companies have varying business goals. And one mistake I've made, and I've had to learn that the hard way from feedback from peers and teammates on my team is, hey, that's not what they want. You're assuming that's what they want because that's what many other companies want. And there is some truth to the fact that if you don't know what they want, or you want to recommend something because they don't know what they want, typically the answer is usually increased traffic, quality traffic, not just random traffic, relevant traffic, increased conversion rate, and then increased conversions, with conversions being some type of action related to money. That's usually sales of a product, purchases, leads, or for nonprofits, it's more like donations or something like more volunteers signing up to volunteer. And the issue with that is if you get too accustomed to turning off your ears and just assuming and cookie cutter, copying and pasting what worked for previous companies to the next one, is that you're going to be off the mark sometimes. And it's kind of an intermediate tip, but it's really important because you got to sit down, even if you're just working with one company in-house, listen to the leadership, listen to your teammates, really identify what they want. And here's another kicker: if they change their mind and they shift their vision to something else, you got to pay attention. It's not always clear as day, and the shift may be more subtle. So you have to pay attention, listen to what they say, and then adjust what you measure in accordance. I'll give you an example. So I had this one client, and they were very big, multi-billion-dollar company, very successful, and they were in various different industries. It was kind of like a holding company, so they did everything from furnitures and fixtures to some more intense tactical aerospace solution stuff. And at one point, their goals were more revenue focused, money focused. And so you had that standard playbook of traffic, conversion rate, conversions, leads. But then their goals shifted to more marketing automation, user experience design, and just getting their bases settled, their fundamentals settled. And I didn't notice that shift because I was so focused on revenue, because usually, and for good reason, if you don't know what to measure or if you don't know what to do, you measure revenue and it works because money, cash is the cash flow of all businesses. So I was unable to sense that shift. And, it was later that I got a lot of feedback, thankfully, from my teammates that like, hey, you're still way too focused and you're speaking way too much on these things that the client no longer cares about. And you need to pay attention and shift and notice that shift. And so for you, how does this apply? Well, it's all about understanding what your customers, your team, your managers, your business leaders that you're trying to serve want, and how things may shift. It's not always money focused or this or that or what you may have experienced in the past. So pay attention, because that's going to define what your qualitative goals are, and that will set the right metrics to measure your success with. So in this case, the shift went from measuring leads and conversion rate and all of that and traffic to more so seeing if we can complete a setup of a marketing automation system and some introductory lead scoring and funnel scoring things with marketing automation, and focusing on that in our discussions together, and a bunch of other things that I won't get into because I've already made my point. So that's the second tip. And then the third and final tip is hone down your metrics to your top 10 KPIs at max. I like to keep it under 5. You can always have tons and tons of granular, detailed supporting metrics under that, but you want to keep it to like 5 KPIs. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. And that way you don't have so many metrics that are confusing to everyone. No one likes to see a dashboard with like hundreds of different metrics, because that just serves to confuse someone. So keep it to 5 big ones or less, 10 if you can't keep it under 5. And then under that, you can have more granular supporting metrics that support and contribute to those key KPIs. But, keep it simple. Even the supporting metrics, I like to hone down to like, less than 10 per KPI. So let me just give you an example. And this is not just my experience. This is a lot of successful companies who have been case studied and profiled in a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. So if you look at Google or Starbucks, which were profiled in this book, they all had one big metric that they were measuring success by. And then usually, I think Google had 6 KPIs under that, and then more metrics under that. But for Google, for example, when they're starting out, their one metric was, having the most accurate, useful user experience when someone used their search engines. And then they had 6 KPIs to quantify that, and that was it. So when you have such a simple goal and simple ways to measure that, everything else becomes simplified. Whereas, when most people, it's companies, I find it's usually just from lack of awareness, and that's where things get cluttered. So keep it simple. So, for example, let's keep going with that nonprofit example. Your KPIs may just be 3. It could be increasing traffic for relevant content. So you're not just getting random traffic. That's a vanity metric, but increasing traffic by, let's say, 25% in the next quarter or the next year. That's one KPI. Another may be increasing the amount of donation conversion. So more donations. And then the third may be increasing the conversion rate on these landing pages by improving the words written on those landing pages and the pictures, the design, so that a greater percentage of the same amount of people convert when they see those donation pages. So those are the 3 numbers that you could put at the top of the report. And then you have a clear aim. You don't have to make it so complicated. And then under that, you could have all sorts of different supporting metrics, such as traffic broken down by different marketing channels. So you can have, hey, we got 50% increase in social media advertising traffic. And then our search engine traffic went up by 10%. But then our organic social traffic dropped by 15%. So you can see more granularly, okay, what's working in terms of marketing channels to lead to that big KPI goal of increasing traffic. So you can double down on a channel that's working better. You can even include offline sources here, depending on what type of company you're running. So you could have, let's say, postcards. I sent out this many postcards and it got this many people to donate. So then you can double down on whatever channel is giving you higher return on investment. So then you can get very granular underneath about what's working and what's not, and the quality of the, people you bring in all sorts. I won't get into that. The point being, simplify, start high level, align clearly on the qualitative goals, which will branch into just a few KPIs and then various supporting metrics. And by doing all these things together, you can clearly and articulately present something to leadership that is digestible. Because guess what? A lot of leaders are not so tech savvy compared to you. They're not in the numbers that often. So keep it simple. Will make it easier for them to understand. And keep it honest too, because they're going to be skeptical. It's better to, present the truth that your numbers went down and then an action plan on how to turn that around versus trying to hide or fudge or fib these numbers in some way to make you look better. And with that, like and subscribe. Join my free email newsletter below to get a job as a data marketing analyst and work remote. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.